you joined me on an event for AWS recently, and we talked about this a little bit, getting started, and the cost of getting started has gotten so minuscule compared to what it was. I like to get on my old man, back in my day, sort of soapbox every once in a while with some of these like student founders and talk about how when I graduated, it was the first time I got to go visit a network operations center, like to go into a cage, right? And to see like $2 million worth of hardware sitting in a cage. And you have to go through the security, and you have to go through all the things. And you think about raising money for a startup now, right? You can, I don't know how much you guys raised when you first started at the Zebra. I know you came in slightly after the seed round, right? The seed round. We raised the seed round. We were the friends and family at Baker of just under 400,000, right? And like that lasted us, 18, 20 months pretty easily, because it all went to, human resources. And everything else was really just like, very light operating expenses because of the fact that we were cloud first. And so many of these customers that I see now at AWS, because I get to work in the startups group, I'm really fortunate to work with these startups because it's very much my comfort zone. What I've been there, I've done that. We offer with a program called Activate, like if for founders credits, you can get $1,000 in credits just by having a domain name and a unique email address and saying like, here's my business plan. And like that can last you, if you're not doing anything really intensive, that can last you months, right? $1,000. And then you can have something up and running. You can find your product market fit. You can start bringing in people that you need to grow things, and you're off and running. Back in our day, I was like, all right, I raised 400 grand. That's all going to servers.
Yeah, I got to go buy some servers. I got to go rent some space at a colo. I got to worry about paying for bandwidth, et cetera.
Yeah, nowadays that's like, we refer to that as at Amazon as undifferentiated heavy lifting, which is absolutely the case. And I'm a big proponent of the current movement towards serverless and managed services, because it takes that even a step further, right? Like, so VPCs were the first step where it's like, okay, great. You no longer have to have a physical box, but still it was kind of like a digital representation of a physical box. You still logged into it, you still have to install your software, etc. Now it's gotten to the point where it's like, yeah, you've got a database. You don't need to know where it lives. You don't need to know how big it is. It'll just scale. It's elastic. It'll grow out. It'll come back in if you decide you don't need as much usage, and you're only going to pay for what you use, right? I think that is the holy grail when it comes to, I just want to focus on product, because there's a conversation I have a lot with folks. It's like, I think as product people, and I consider myself a product person. I think you consider yourself a product person.
Absolutely.
I don't want to be editing Apache config files. I don't want to be editing, I don't want to be setting up my database nodes, right? I don't want to be doing any of that stuff. I just want to get hands on keyboard and start building products.
Right. So here's an interesting, thought to that, and something I've considered over the years. And, I started thinking about this when ORMs came out to manage objects and items in databases. And so one of my areas of expertise is even though I didn't study it in college, I actually got really deep into data and databases, right? But one of the things I noticed was that ORMs made so many things easy, but developers then started to not understand how things worked under the cover. And that led to suboptimal things. So I wonder, like, and this is just a high level I'm using of, there's so much we're unlocking with these higher level concepts and these abstractions, but how do we keep people aware enough of what's going on inside to understand the implications of the decisions they're making, the architectural, implications, the performance implications, et cetera.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I see that problem all the time with our startup customers, where they use an ORM that is owning the data layer for them. And then they hit a point where they start to scale and it doesn't scale well. And then they're in a situation where they're like, well, I didn't even really design my database. The ORM did it for me. I don't have a deep enough understanding of how that works. So I don't even know where to start. And you have to seek outside help to come fix it. And, all things being the same, that's a good problem to have, right? You're seeing scale. It's, someone recently said something that really struck home to me, right? Like, that's technical debt. That's debt that you're racking up early on. I never before compared technical debt to actual monetary debt. But really, if in a startup, it's the same thing, right? Like, you're accruing financial debt as a startup. You're taking investment, whether it's a note or a price round or whatever, like that's debt you're going to have to work back off. And tech debt's the same, right? You just have to evaluate how comfortable you are with a certain level of debt. And at that point, when it's time to pay the bills, you have to figure out how to do it. And hopefully at that point, you've gotten a better understanding of where your product's going to go. And so, in my opinion, at that point, being able to say, okay, we need to re-architect this and figure out a better way to do it now because we've got product market fit, but hey, we got here. So that's okay. So now we bring in the Meeteshes and the Rogers of the world who know what the underlying layer looks like and have them build it out the right.
It's interesting that you brought up technical debt because it's been on my mind recently, right? And technical debt, like it is actually a very apt term and concept because it is something you incur and it grows over time, right? Like just like debt would, but it's not all bad, right? Just like monetary debt can be used for leverage and can be used to generate wealth. And so I wonder, I read this article years ago, and the term technical debt sometimes, has a negative connotation. Like it, but I wonder if there's now going to be some way we can start to switch the conversation of using that technical debt as leverage to build technical wealth, right? And that's something that I just started thinking about of, can we reframe that conversation so it's not just about paying down the debt, but it's about utilizing it the same way you might leverage debt to grow wealth. You take a mortgage on a home, right? Like, and then you invest that money somewhere else to go build wealth, right? So I wonder if we can draw on some of those terms and concepts to actually focus less on paying down the debt, which you still have to do, right? But on using it as leverage to generate wealth.
Absolutely. And I think you can already make that comparison with the way that, the example we just gave, right? Mm-hmm. You're leveraging that technical debt to get to a point to where your valuation is high enough to where you can bring in more capital so you can pay down that debt under better terms, right? And with a better plan laid out ahead of you. And I think that's absolutely the case. And I still run into developers and engineers who, and God bless them, they want to write perfect code and they want 100% test coverage.
I was that person when I started.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly. And you want to do everything by the books, and then your company runs out of money and you don't even get a chance to find product market fit, right? Like quick and dirty. I've always been comfortable with quick and dirty. Like I think most of my startups have at one point or another been held together with chewing gum and paper clips, just to be like, I just got to get this in front of an investor who can write a check, and then we'll be good. Then we'll fix it.
It's really funny because I came from the other side. I call myself a reformed perfectionist, and I got to a point where like I completely am okay with quick and dirty. Like I understand the trade-offs, but it took a long time. I came from a different angle, right?
Yep.
But I had to learn that early on, that along with timing, right? Like perfection was the enemy of done. And when it came to startups, done was more important than perfect.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. I'll never forget Owen Askren. I'm sure you had classes with him.
Absolutely. One of my favorite professors. Yeah.
Absolutely. Still to this day, I still look back on so much advice that he gave and so many gems that he dropped on us. And I'll never forget and I'm sure this is not his quote, he pulled that out of a book somewhere, but it's always stuck with me in that, the order of operations when building product should be, make it work, make it right, make it fast, make it small, right? And that's it. And 100%. That's always been my methodology. It's like, all right, great. Step number 1, make it work. That's it. Step number 2, make sure there's no egregious, sort of like badness in there.
Yeah.
And then, 3 and 4, and and in the last 20 years, even step 4 can be completely skipped over because who needs to make it small anymore? Like no one's worried about space.
Yeah. I mean, the technology and the cost of it goes down so much. Like I look at it more of, let's not compensate for egregiously poor architectural decisions with just spending money, but there's a limit, right? At some point, you don't want to spend any more because you'll spend more in making it small than you will that you'll actually save in terms of the money to grow it.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, making it small is just an ego play. Like you just want to point at your code and say, look at how nice my code is. And no one sees it but you, right? As long as it works, that's it. At the end of the day.
And that's a whole other topic you can go in, which is a lot of times you make it small, it's no longer maintainable, right? And then, then you get into concepts of scale and what's easier to scale a team around. Really tight, concise, small code, or larger, more explicit, maintainable code.
Yeah, exactly. Something that's self-explanatory, something that anyone can jump in and understand. Absolutely. I 100% agree with you, especially in this day and age when storage and compute has gotten so cheap. Why not do it? At that point, again, it's just, it feels like ego. It's like, look at what I can do. Like, I don't care that you can do that. Now I can't read it. You know, what good is that to me?